I can make it sound like a duck.
That's weird. Hey guys, this week's My Faith Friday is a little different. I have my friend AMARIS, and she's gonna share her testimony with us. So stay tuned for that. Let's get started.
Hey, my name is AMARIS, and I'm Cecia's friend, and I'm gonna share my testimony with you guys. And it's just a story of the things that the Lord has done in my life, and this is just me testifying to what He's done in my life. So growing up, my parents didn't really have a relationship with God. My dad grew up Jehovah's Witness, and my mom grew up Catholic, and together they didn't really agree on religion or anything like that, so we just didn't go to church. All the while they didn't agree, and so we just didn't go. And I kind of grew up in a chaotic home, chaotic situation, just like the way my parents handled conflict wasn't very good, and there was alcohol and drunkenness and just very chaotic situation for a child to grow up in. And so my mom decided that she wanted to get a divorce from my dad, and so he moved out of the house. But all the while it was kind of like his last attempt to get our family to stay together was to go to church. And so he told all of us, we're gonna start going to church. And so we just started to go to a non-denominational church in my hometown. And even though growing up I had never been to church, around this time I was already 8 years old. I didn't know much about God at all, besides what my grandmas or whatever would tell me. But at church, I just remember having so much love and being surrounded by so much love and so much joy and so much peace from what my hometown was like, or from what my home life was like. And I didn't know God really, but I knew that He was good. I knew whatever church was, that it was a good thing, and that it had lots of love in it and lots of joy, and the people there loved me well. And I can tell there was a difference in my mom and even in my dad, that when they would go to church there was happiness, and within away from church there wasn't. And so I knew that this thing was good. I loved God, but I didn't know really why, besides that I thought it was good. But fast forward, my parents did end up getting a divorce, and me and my mom moved 5 hours away to Dallas. And I lived in Dallas for 3 years just with my mom. And in those 3 years she would take me to church every single Sunday. And though we didn't have I lived in a pretty nice neighborhood in Dallas, but we didn't have much money, so a lot of my friends had nice things, nice clothes and big houses and lots of cars, but me and my mom did not have those things. And so it was kind of hard to grow up, or to go through middle school not having enough. But during that time, me and my mom really grew with the Lord, and my mom really pressed in with the Lord, and she modeled what it was like to have faith when we didn't know how we were going to pay for certain things, or how she was going to pick me up from school because she had to work. And she really did just model faith really well. And me and her both just grew. We would go to Sunday, go to church every Sunday, and just learn about God. And she would write notes in her notebook, and she would worship, and she was just that model to me, that I had never seen someone who loved God before. And so those 3 years were really sweet. And on the 3rd year that we were living there, one of her ex-boyfriends calls her and says, hey, I think we should get married, and you should come and move back to our hometown. And to me that was the most devastating news in the world, because I love my school, I love being in Dallas, I love my friends, and I didn't want to go back to my hometown. And I was really angry at my mom for making us move because she wanted to marry this guy, because she said yes. But come to find out, it was probably the greatest thing that's happened in my life, because I got such a wonderful stepdad, and he's literally one of my best friends. He loves the Lord so much, and he knew that when it was time for him to marry my mom, he just went for it. And he brought me into the family so well. And literally I just called him last night, and we talked for 2 or 3 hours, and he's just gives me such good advice. And if I'm talking about boys, like I'm talking with my stepdad, and he really knows how to listen to me and give me like a wise perspective on things. And like through his relationship, he's really like modeled what a life for Christ is. Like when my mom and my stepdad got married to each other, like they decided like we're not gonna drink anymore. We're gonna like go to church and we're gonna like, really walk this walk out. And so I got to see like such a strong and healthy marriage modeled so beautifully, and I got the greatest gift in my stepdad. And so we would go to church, and my junior year of high school, I was really pressing in with the Lord, and I just remember that this one night I got baptized. I got filled with the Holy Spirit, and there was like this excitement in me, this joy in me, like there was like something different. The Lord had like touched me that night, and I was so excited to share like my faith with people. But at the same time, in my hometown, it's kind of hard to talk about your faith, because a lot of people are like Christian in my hometown, but they don't really live out a life of Christianity. And so they would go drinking, they would party on the weekends, but like all the while, like they were going to like Young Life or church on Sunday, but then the other 6 days of the week they weren't leading a godly life. And so I feel like I didn't really have fellowship with people my own age. I just had like the people that went to my church who were all older. And so that's something I really prayed for. So my senior year, like I said, I was looking for fellowship, praying for like someone that I could like talk to about my faith. And my senior year, I met this guy, and he was sharing about his life and his faith with the Lord, and I was sharing about my life and how I love the Lord. And we ended up getting in a relationship together. He became my boyfriend, and it was really awesome because for the first time I had someone that I could share all these like things with. You know, I could share about my faith. I could talk to him about church and what the Lord was doing in my heart, and he would do the same. And we had the same ideals and what we wanted in life and in a relationship, and it just seemed to like just fit together so well. And it was a really sweet like start to our relationship. But eventually, because it was a long distance relationship, I was living in our hometown and he was off at school in college because he was a year older than me. Just jealousy and like envy and pride and hurt and things from our past that we didn't deal with became to creep up in our relationship, as it usually does in a relationship. When you don't deal with things, you don't address them. And we were both really young. We didn't know how to have this like serious relationship. And because of that, we didn't guard each other's hearts very well. And through not guarding each other's hearts became just like this thing where he was like my God and I was his God, and we like made an idol out of each other. And God left the center of our relationship, and we put each other as the center of our relationship. And if you guys know, that path leads down destruction, because when God's not at the center of your life, when he's not at the center of your relationships, there's no firm foundation, and your foundation is in something that's rocky, because men are rocky. Men are gonna stumble, they're gonna fall, and they're gonna fail you. But God is a firm foundation. He's never gonna be rocky. He's always gonna be stable. And so if you build your life on God, it's gonna be such a steady life you're gonna lead. But if you build your foundation in men or career or whatever it is, it's like building your house on sand, and it's just gonna fall, right? And so that is something that happened in our relationship, and I felt the Lord asking me to end this relationship. So we were together for a few months, maybe a year, and I knew that the Lord was asking me to end it. And so I went to him and I said, hey, I know that this relationship isn't what we thought it would be. There's a lot of jealousy, there's like a lot of insecurity, like I think we should like end this relationship. And so I did. I was obedient to God. And this was the summer before I came to college at UTSA. And this summer, I think I grew really like bitter and hurt that God would bring someone into my life and just take him away. You know, I just looked at God as this someone like, oh wow, you brought me this awesome guy and this awesome boyfriend, this awesome companion that I can fellowship with. But then it just felt like he was asking me, like he took him away from me. And I grew really hurt. And so when I came to college, you know, I didn't have a strong identity. I didn't know why it ended. I was just really broken. And broken people, they try to find their worth in things that to make them feel better. And so when I came to college, I went to parties, and I went out and I would drink, and it was so frustrating for me because I grew up with like a father that drank a lot, and I knew how much it hurt. But all the while, like, this is the same thing that like I was doing, and I knew that it was breaking God's heart, and so I almost like couldn't face God anymore. I was so much shame. And this was only like a month or two of drinking, but like those couple of weekends that I went out like really like hurt my heart. But shortly after like those weekends, like I just remember one time just being in my closet, and I was like drunk, and I was like frustrated because I'm like, this isn't me, you know, like I love the Lord, and like I know that God's not pleased with me. And I just had to come to that realization myself, and realizing that this wasn't who I was, and just had like a lot of like guilt because of that. But eventually it only lasted like a month or so, and then my ex came back into my life, and he was like, hey, I think, you know, it's time that you've had our break, like it's time we should get back together. And I agreed, and so we began this relationship. We started it back up. So that ceased like the partying and all of that. Like I didn't drink anymore, but now I was back in this relationship that I wasn't really sure about, but my flesh wanted him so much, and it was like, oh, thank you God for like bringing him back, even though like I knew that what the Lord had told me was to like end it, you know. And anyways, along this time, I'm like looking for a fellowship, and I am going to church, but I'm kind of just sitting in the back, and then I'm leaving early because like I don't know anybody. I'm just going to this church. But my friend, she met this girl, and her name was Angelica, and she was part of this Christian organization called Chi Alpha. And I remember going to my first small group, and it was like around November, and I'm literally just sitting there, and I'm looking at Angelica talk, and she's talking about the Lord. And if you know my friend Angelica, you know how glowy she is, and how bright her eyes are, and like how tender her heart is when she talks about God, the things of God. And I don't remember what she was saying that night, but I remember she was saying something hard, and it was convicting me, but she was saying it in such a gentle way. And I just remember being like, this girl loves God, like she's on fire for God, like there's nothing that she wants to talk about besides God, like that's all she wants to talk about, and she lives a life that pleases God. And I was like, she loves God, and I say I love God, but our lives, they don't really look the same. Like she loves God, but her life is like sold out, and I say I love God, but there's still things that I'm holding on to. There's still hurt and pain that I'm holding on to, and I'm not really fully like living up to the calling that the Lord had on my life. I didn't know how to share my faith with people still. Like I was still very quiet and scared to share that I was a Christian. And so going into her small group, I knew that there were some things that had to change. Well, I ended up staying in this relationship with this guy, and it was like a constant battle of like spending time with him and trying to be in small group, trying to serve small group, trying to serve him, trying to talk to him, because we did have a long distance relationship, and so I would have to FaceTime him or call him. And when I was doing those things, I wasn't in fellowship, I wasn't with my sisters, I wasn't learning about God, because you know, Thursday night comes around and there's an issue and we gotta fight and we gotta talk about it. And I just remember just being in this battle with myself, like, are you gonna like commit to the Lord, or are you gonna just fight for this relationship? And by this time, like, he had already given me like a promise ring, and